The people who procrastinate the most are often the same people with the highest standards. The perfectionists, the ones who, before they even open the document, have already thought through 17 ways it could go wrong, and then 3 more. It's not laziness. It doesn't feel anything like laziness from the inside. It feels like being thorough, like being realistic, like the voice in your head is just trying to keep you from making a mistake you can't take back. Somewhere along the way, starting something started to feel like stepping into traffic, and eventually that feeling just became background noise, normal. If you've ever sat in front of a blank document at 11 p.m., not writing, not really doing anything, just kind of existing in the dread of it, and then looked up and somehow 2 hours had passed and the apartment was clean, but the work wasn't done, and then you spent the rest of the night hating yourself for it. Yeah, there's a reason for that. It's just not the reason most people assume. Because the way procrastination gets talked about, lazy, undisciplined, doesn't care enough. None of that matches what it actually feels like from the inside. From the inside, it feels like anxiety, like self-doubt that shows up the second you try to begin something. Like this quiet, persistent fear that whatever you make is going to confirm something you've been trying not to think about yourself. And when the brain picks up on that kind of threat, even a threat that lives entirely in your own head, it does exactly what it was designed to do. It protects you. The thing is, the people this happens to most aren't the ones who care least. They're usually the ones with the loudest internal critics. Not loud in a dramatic way, loud in the way that's been going so long, it just sounds like your own thoughts. They grew up in environments where their value felt tied to what they produced, where mistakes weren't something you learned from, they were something you were. Where trying hard and still falling short wasn't just disappointing, it was somehow revealing. The brain took notes. And now, years later, sometimes decades later, every blank page carries more weight than a blank page should. It's not carrying the task, it's carrying every moment their worth felt like something they had to keep proving. This is what psychologists call performance-based self-worth, a framework where the self-concept is built not on inherent value, but on external validation of competence. And when your sense of okayness depends on doing things perfectly, starting something becomes very high stakes. Because if you start and it's not perfect, the thing at risk isn't just the project, it's you. So the brain does what any intelligent system does when the cost of failure feels catastrophic. It delays. It finds something else. Anything else. Because scrolling, cleaning, reorganizing the kitchen, none of those things carry the possibility of confirming your worst fear about yourself. The task you're avoiding does. They'll open a blank document and stare at it, not for a few minutes, for 40 minutes, maybe more. Then close the laptop. Go reorganize the kitchen, which, for the record, was already fine. Come back. Open the laptop again. Close it. There's a Slack message sitting in drafts. 2 sentences to their manager, something simple, something that should have taken 4 minutes. They've rewritten it enough times that the words don't look like words anymore. Delete. Start over. By 4 p.m., they've decided it can wait until tomorrow. And then there's the person they matched with 3 weeks ago. Someone they actually liked the look of, actually wanted to talk to. The opening message has been written and rewritten so many times, it stopped feeling like a message somewhere around draft 9. Now it just feels like a test. And they're not sure they'll pass it. So they don't send it. The right conditions never arrive. So they wait. And the gap between who they're trying to be and what they're actually doing, that gap doesn't stay the same size. It grows. And this is where it gets almost cruel in its logic. The whole point of avoiding was to not feel bad, to stay safe from the judgment of making something imperfect, something that could be criticized, something that could fail. But the avoiding, It doesn't feel safe either. It feels worse, actually. Because now there's the original fear of starting, plus the guilt of not having started, plus the slowly building awareness that you're the one doing this to yourself. The thing that was supposed to protect you becomes the thing you need protection from. Every day you don't start, the voice gets a little more confident. And the more confident it gets, the harder it is to imagine proving it wrong. There's something else happening underneath all of this, though. Something that doesn't get talked about much. The anxiety doesn't announce itself as anxiety anymore. That's the thing. It announces itself as good judgment. As not yet, you're not ready, the timing is off. Wait until you know more. It stops feeling like fear and starts feeling like wisdom, almost. Like you're the only one being realistic. And that's when procrastination stops being something you do and starts being something closer to how you understand yourself. Research in the Journal of Social and Clinical Psychology found that chronic procrastinators carry significantly higher levels of stress, anxiety, and depression than people who don't struggle with this. Some studies put the gap at close to 30% higher self-reported anxiety scores. And the reason isn't that they're doing less. It's that the things they're not doing never actually leave. They just move into the background of everything else. This low-frequency weight that doesn't turn off between tasks or during dinner or at 2 a.m. when they're trying to sleep. Dr. Fuschia Sirois, a psychologist at Durham University who has studied the long-term health consequences of procrastination, frames it this way. It's not just a time management failure. It's a self-compassion failure. The procrastinator doesn't only delay. They spend the entire delay punishing themselves for delaying, which means by the time the next task comes around, they're already carrying yesterday's verdict into it. There's probably a word for what that accumulation feels like. A few words maybe, but none of them quite. At 20, this felt like a fixable problem. The right productivity app, the right system, the right morning routine. At 30, it starts to feel like something that doesn't have a fix exactly, more like a pattern that runs deeper than habit, shaped by years of being told that worth was something you earned through output, and that anything short of excellent was the same as failing. By now, most people carrying this have figured out that the tasks were never really the problem. It was the impossible standard held while attempting them. The standard that makes starting feel like stepping onto a stage where the only two outcomes are perfection or humiliation. They grieve sometimes the version of themselves that could have just started, the one who could have made the imperfect thing without the 3-day shame spiral afterward, the version for whom good enough felt like an actual option instead of a quiet threat to their entire sense of self. That grief is real, and it doesn't really go away. Or maybe it does for some people. It's hard to know, capable of seeing every angle of a problem before anyone else in the room, and somehow unable to begin. Perfectionist in the truest sense, which means the bar is always just slightly out of reach. Not lazy, just stuck in a very particular, very exhausting way. That is the chronic procrastinator, not undisciplined. Just carrying a nervous system that learned, a long time ago, that being seen trying and failing is more dangerous than not being seen at all. And somehow, despite all of it, they're still here, still trying to find a way to start, still hoping that one day the voice that says, not good enough, will quiet down long enough to let them just begin. If any part of this felt like someone finally putting words to something you've been carrying alone, that's exactly why this channel exists. Subscribe if you want more of that. We go deep here, and if this one hit close to home, the comment section is full of people who would say the same thing.